quiet battle you must win every morning. There's a war that begins before the world even wakes. Not with others, not with bombs or fire or noise, but a silent, relentless battle between who you are and who you could be. Each morning, we arrive at a crossroads. No cheering crowd, no camera, just you, and the decision. Will I take the easy path, the warm blanket, the delayed start, the small excuse? Or will I rise not just from sleep, but into the life I was meant to live? The ancient Stoics called this the first victory of the day. Marcus Aurelius, ruler of the known world, wrote of this struggle with honesty and fatigue. Is this what I was created for? To huddle under the blankets and stay warm? He wasn't lecturing. He was confessing. Like you, like me, like all of us. Discipline isn't something you stumble upon. It's not a prize you win. It's not a burst of motivation that shows up when you need it. Discipline is a quiet decision you make over and over again. A contract between your higher self and your lower impulse. A test of who's really in charge. And the truth? That decision determines your destiny. Not someday. Today. Now. One, the choice of Hercules, a story older than time. Thousands of years ago, a young man walked alone through the hills of ancient Greece. He came to a crossroads, two paths stretched before him. One easy, one hard. One filled with pleasure, comfort, and shortcuts. The other marked by effort, integrity, and sacrifice. That young man was Hercules. And what he faced that day wasn't just a myth, it was a mirror. Because whether we realize it or not, we all stand at that same crossroads. Sometimes in big, dramatic moments, but more often in quiet, invisible ones. Like choosing whether to speak the truth when it's inconvenient, or whether to keep going when no one's watching. The Stoics saw this not as fiction, but as a timeless truth. A parable for the human soul. Epictetus would say, if you want to be good, first believe that you are bad. Why? Because only then will you recognize that there is a choice, that you can choose to rise. That virtue, courage, discipline, justice, wisdom, is never handed to you. It's chosen, earned, one decision at a time. John Boyd, the military strategist, framed it another way. To be or to do. Will you chase the image or live the purpose? Because at its heart, this isn't just a story about Hercules. It's a story about you. Right now, in this moment, you're at a crossroads. Will you choose ease or excellence? Distraction or depth? Excuse or evolution? And the beauty is, that choice is always yours. You don't need permission. You just need the courage to choose virtue, even when it costs. Especially when it costs. But of course, knowing what to choose is only half the battle. The harder part, the real crucible, is doing it, especially when you don't feel like it. And for that, we must turn to a man who ruled the greatest empire in the world, and still had trouble getting out of bed. 2. Marcus and the morning struggle, the emperor who didn't want to wake up. It's easy to imagine that the great ones leap out of bed, full of purpose and fire. But Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, Stoic philosopher, commander of legions, did not. He writes in Meditations, not as a conqueror boasting of his willpower, but as a man speaking to himself in the dark hours of dawn. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I was made to do this, to work as a human being. He groaned under warm blankets, just like you, just like me. That's what makes this passage so powerful. It isn't a command, it's a confession. Even the most disciplined among us struggle. But what defines them is that they win that battle more days than not. I first read that passage as a college student, tired, drifting, full of half-finished plans. And it hit me like a thunderclap. This man, the most powerful in the world, had the same internal war I did. And he still got up. Marcus didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't pretend it was easy. He said, So you were born to feel nice, instead of doing things and experiencing them. That line stays with me even now. So today I rise early, not because I enjoy discomfort, but because I want to honor what I was made for. To do what my nature demands, not delay it. Before the noise, before the notifications, before the excuses, I journal before I touch my phone. I walk with my children before I walk into the world. I write in the quiet, with the sunrise as witness. And in doing so, I reclaim the first victory of the day. But let me be honest, discipline isn't just about early mornings. It's not just waking up, it's why you wake up. Because if you don't have a deeper reason, the early wake up will become just another performance. Discipline, the Stoics taught, is not punishment, it's power. And nowhere is that power more visible than in how we care for our bodies so our minds can lead. 3. The body as a servant. Discipline as temperance, not extremes. Discipline is not about punishment. It's about preparation. It's not about how much you can push yourself to the brink, but about how deliberately you build a life that serves your higher self, consistently, wisely, sustainably. The Stoics didn't chase extremes. They believed in temperance, the golden mean between indulgence and deprivation. Seneca wrote, "We treat the body rigorously, so it may not be disobedient to the mind." That's not cruelty, that's alignment. Think of Admiral Stavridis. At the height of his career, he noticed something. He could no longer live on adrenaline and midnight oil. His body was slowing down. And so he adjusted, not to become weaker, but to stay sharp. He said, "Discipline is an act of character. That means going to bed early so you can wake with clarity. That means nourishing yourself not out of vanity, but so you can endure the mental demands of leadership. It means seeing sleep, exercise, even rest, not as luxuries, but as forms of responsibility." Toni Morrison, one of the greatest writers of our time, said she rose to write before the word mom was ever spoken. Not for productivity, but for peace, for presence. Me, I don't pull all-nighters anymore. Not because I'm soft, but because I know you can't win the morning if you sabotage the night. Discipline is not deprivation. It's choosing structure over chaos, rhythm over reactivity. It's investing in the body so that the soul can move freely. And when we live this way, something profound begins to happen. We stop negotiating with ourselves. We start commanding ourselves. And that internal command, practiced day after day, becomes something unshakable, a kind of inner armor. But to truly understand what daily discipline looks like in action, we must look beyond philosophy. We must look to those who lived it, every single day. 4. Lou Gehrig versus Babe Ruth, the two paths of discipline. Two men, two legends, two destinies. Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth, names etched into baseball's history, larger than life. Both gifted, both adored, but only one truly disciplined. Lou Gehrig played 2,130 consecutive games. Through sickness, through injury, through broken bones no one knew about, until x-rays revealed he'd shattered nearly every bone in his hand multiple times. He didn't complain. He didn't boast. He just showed up. Every single day. Why? Because he loved the game, not the fame, not the spotlight, not the roar of the crowd, but the work, the grind, the quiet fulfillment of doing what he was made to do. Babe Ruth, on the other hand, might have had more raw talent. He had the crowd, the charisma, the flash, but he also had a weakness, indulgence. Hot dogs, parties, pleasure. He didn't love baseball the way Gehrig did. He loved what baseball gave him, and it showed. His career, though brilliant, was erratic, undisciplined. He burned bright, but burned out. The photos of him near the end, bloated, tired, a shadow of who he could have been, speak louder than statistics ever could. One man gave everything to his calling. The other gave in to comfort. Seneca warned us, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Gehrig proved himself, not with words, but with action. Repetition. Devotion. That's what discipline looks like. Not dramatic, not loud, but steady, unshakable, rooted. The kind of discipline that says, "I will not waste this life." And yet, discipline doesn't only shape champions on the field. Its true test comes when the stakes are higher, when you're not just playing to win, but fighting to change the world. 5. The discipline of a movement, marching with courage, standing with stillness. We remember the civil rights movement for its moral clarity, but we often forget its hidden engine, discipline. Marching into hate-filled crowds, sitting still while fists flew, rising each day not in anger, but in purpose. This wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't reactive. It was studied, structured, strategic. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. called nonviolence not just a tactic, but a lifelong commitment. There's a moment, he's on stage, delivering a speech, when a man rushes up and strikes him. The audience gasps. King instinctively raises his hands to shield himself. Then he lowers them, slowly, deliberately. He lets the man hit him, because he made a vow to love even those who tried to hurt him. To meet violence not with rage, but with principle. That's not weakness. That's discipline. John Lewis stood firm as batons rained down on him. He smiled in his mugshots, marched with a toothbrush raised in the air, ready for jail, for sacrifice. His motto, keep your eye on the prize. They weren't just resisting injustice. They were mastering themselves. The Stoics said, if someone can provoke you, realize your mind is not yet free. The civil rights leaders lived that truth. They showed that the real power doesn't come from dominance. It comes from composure, from stillness in the storm. Their opponents lost control. They did not. And that discipline of action, of emotion, of vision moved a nation. But this kind of strength doesn't just appear. It's forged through habits, through hardships, through moments when giving in would be easy, but standing tall means everything. And to see that in its purest form, we look to one of the greatest leaders America ever produced, who led not with anger, but with mild philosophy. 6. Washington in the calm light, leading from within. In the chaos of revolution, when tempers flared and swords hung at the ready, George Washington chose a different weapon, stillness. He had every reason to rage. His army unpaid, his officers betrayed. A rebellion within the revolution was brewing. Men plotting to seize power, dissolve democracy before it could even begin. Washington could have crushed them, but instead he walked into the room, unfolded a small speech, and paused. Struggling to read his notes, he reached for his spectacles. Then he said softly, "I'm sorry, gentlemen. I've grown not only gray, but nearly blind in the service of my country." And the room broke. Tears, silence, surrender, not to force, but to dignity. This was Washington's power, not his strength in battle, but his discipline in restraint. The Stoics would call this sophrosine, wise moderation, self-command. He modeled himself after Cato, the Roman statesman who would rather die than betray his values. Washington studied the ancients, and he didn't just admire them. He became one of them. He didn't crave authority. He gave it back. He didn't speak often, but when he did, people listened. Because his leadership came not from domination, but from discipline. One painter who sat with Washington for hours said this: beneath that composed exterior was a man of fire, a man who had to work to be calm. That's what made him great. Not that he was born stoic, but that he chose to be. And that choice, to govern not others first, but yourself, echoes through history. From emperors to soldiers, from protesters to poets. And in the next moment, we'll meet a man who brought that same fire-forged discipline to the darkest prison on earth and still walked out unbroken. 7. Stockdale and the ultimate test, discipline when everything is taken. Imagine this, you're shot down over enemy territory, captured, tortured, stripped of everything, your freedom, your rank, your identity. What do you have left? Admiral James Stockdale had only one thing left, choice. As he parachuted into North Vietnam, he knew where he was going, into a place where men broke, where time stood still, where pain had no name. But he also knew something else, something Epicurus had once written. A podium and a prison are both places, but in either, your ability to choose remains intact, if you wish. And so Stockdale chose. Not bitterness, not self-pity, but discipline. He tapped messages on walls. He whispered courage into the cracks of the Hanoi Hilton. He memorized names, rank, and injuries of fellow prisoners to carry their stories home. He chanted silently, control fear, control guilt, not for himself, but to become a pillar others could lean on. He called it the Stockdale paradox. You must never confuse faith that you will prevail with the discipline to confront the brutal facts of your reality. That is Stoicism in action. That is what it means to live the philosophy, not in comfort, but in crisis. Because discipline isn't proven when everything is easy. It's revealed when everything is stripped away. And still you hold the line. Even in darkness, Stockdale remained light for others. Even in chains, he remained free in the only way that mattered, within. And that's the final truth Stoicism offers us. That no matter how far you've fallen, how often you've failed, how long you've wandered, you can return. You can recommit. Because the path of discipline is always waiting for those willing to choose it. 8. Returning to the path, the discipline of starting again. We all fall. Even Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, the model of Stoic virtue, wouldn't have written "return to yourself" so often if he hadn't drifted away himself. That's the unspoken truth about discipline. It's not about perfection. It's about return. Falling isn't failure. Refusing to stand back up is. When Ryan Holiday was writing his 10th book, Discipline is Destiny, he hit a wall. Burned out, frustrated, exhausted. He flipped through his own note cards, looking for a reason to keep going. And there it was, in his own handwriting. Trust the process. He didn't feel like writing. Did it anyway. Didn't believe the book would come together. Showed up anyway. That's what discipline is. It's not a moment of inspiration. It's what you do without inspiration. It's the courage to begin again, not once, but 1,000 times. To come back to the rhythm, to the principle, to the path, as quickly as possible. The Stoics didn't demand that you never slip. They only asked, how quickly can you return? You see, in a world that celebrates motivation, what we need more is recovery. Not to always be strong, but to know how to become strong again. Because every day offers a new invitation. Will you live by your lower impulse or your higher self? That choice is always waiting, and the road is never closed. And when you learn to walk that road again and again, when it becomes not just habit but identity, you begin to lead others without saying a word. You become an example, a presence, a quiet force that calls others to rise. Discipline isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself, but it changes everything. It shapes the morning you wake into, the choices you make when no one sees, the legacy you build, not in flashes, but in footsteps. It's the quiet force behind greatness, the invisible line between who you are and who you were born to be. And now, you know the way back to it. Maybe you've drifted, maybe you've fallen, but the path has not moved. And each moment, this very one, is a fresh invitation to walk it again. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself again and again, don't waste what's left of your life in doubt. The choice is always here. The prize is always waiting. but you must claim it, day by day, decision by decision. Because the small acts of discipline, they are the beginning of extraordinary transformation. And we've only just begun. In part 2, we'll go deeper. We'll explore how to build unshakable systems of discipline, how to break free from emotional chaos, and how to stay true to your path when life tries to pull you off it. You'll discover the real tools, the daily practices, and the mental frameworks that turn discipline into destiny. If you felt something shift today, if even one sentence stirred something within you, don't let it fade. Stay with this, walk with me, and let's finish what we've started. Subscribe now and get ready for part 2, the daily engine of transformation, because the real journey is just beginning.